Kids usually grow up with a fear of monsters. It's a common phase that almost everyone goes through in childhood. And sometimes these monsters are real, and they don't hide under the bed. They hid in plain sight, and they called themselves parents. Today's case will be a hard one. It involves one of the most vulnerable beings in the world, whom people must always protect at all costs.
Breaking news in the murder of 10-year-old Anthony Avalos, a Los Angeles Superior Court judge has just ordered the unsealing of grand jury transcripts in the case, which describe in detail what happened to Anthony during the last days of his life.
Anthony Avalos, as extremely malnourished, quote, skin and bones when he arrived at UCLA Mattel Children's Hospital. The pediatrician telling the court that almost every one of Anthony's organs was failing. His eyes were sunken, his body bruised and burned. A CT scan showed bleeding and swelling of the brain, and 2 doctors today testified that the trauma to Anthony's brain may have been similar to shaken baby syndrome. Earlier today, a detective testified that during their search of the apartment, they found this corner where the carpet was pulled up, and Anthony's siblings testified that's where they were forced to kneel on uncooked rice while holding weights for hours at a time, often until their knees bled.
Hey guys, welcome back to Crimeco, your go-to channel for some intriguing and incredible true crime stories. Before I continue with today's case, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications. So buckle up and get ready to go on a wild ride with us. Today's case began with the sad story of Anthony Avalos. He was a joyful little boy born and raised in Lancaster, California, who tragically died on June 21, 2018 at the hands of his mother, Heather Maxine Barron, and her boyfriend, Kareem Ernesto Leiva. Anthony was supposed to be enjoying his summer vacation from school, but instead, he was tortured beyond limits until his little body gave up. At the time of his death, he was only 10 years old and had just finished 4th grade. On June 20, 2018, at approximately 12:15 p.m., Barron called 911 to report that her son was unresponsive. When questioned about Anthony's condition, Barron and Leiva lied to the authorities and stated that the kid had accidentally fallen from the stairs. The next day, Anthony died from internal bleeding, but his death left the authorities and doctors with lots of doubts. He was malnourished, almost skin and bones, and presented several signs of being beaten. So an investigation began, and what the investigators discovered left everyone shocked. Little Anthony had been neglected, beaten, and tortured for years. Barron and Leiva soon became suspects in Anthony's death, and by June 29th, both were already arrested and charged with 1 count each of murder and torture, with a bail set at $2 million each. They pleaded not guilty in their first court hearing. During the investigations and trial, a lot more came to light, and no one could have predicted the horrors that not only little Anthony endured, but also his siblings. The investigators found out that Anthony and his siblings were under the supervision of state agencies, such as the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services, CDFS, and the Division of Family and Children Services, DFCS, for a very long time. The first report about Anthony was made in 2013 and stated that he was being molested by his grandfather. Further reports showed that this terrible accusation was not followed through since his mother, Barron, stated that the grandfather would no longer have contact with Anthony, but all things considered, there's no way of being sure about that. These government agencies received multiple calls from teachers, relatives, police, and counselors about the condition of these children, but still, no one did anything. Anthony's case could have ended in better circumstances, but unfortunately, the system failed him. Caseworkers put these children under the department's voluntary family maintenance program, in which abused children stay with their parents while they fix their issues. This was one of the many mistakes counselors made, and to say that it was the worst course of action is pretty much an understatement. That program was meant to be for low-risk cases, but Anthony's case was in fact high-risk, and severe measures should have been taken. In one of several reports, Barron was described as someone whose capacity to provide suitable care for her children is severely limited by her poor parenting skills, poor judgment, denial, and lack of awareness of her mental health issues. It was a no-brainer that Anthony and his siblings needed better care. They were vocal about the abuse many times, and counselors still decided that their words meant nothing and that they would be better off with their mother. On January 25, 2023, the trial began, and the testimonies were heartbreaking. Two of Anthony's siblings gave testimony, and what they had to say about how they were raised startled everyone. His brother, Raphael, told detectives that they had to fight each other to avoid punishment and that they had to earn the right to eat, so they were always hungry. When they were locked in a room and had to pee, Leva would push their faces into the puddle. He would sometimes put a shirt in their mouths to quiet their screams. Anthony's sister, Destiny, said Anthony was made to kneel bare kneed on rice a lot, often from the time he got home from school until it was time for bed. That was about 5 hours this poor little angel had to endure that punishment. It was so common that his knees were always scabbed and never got to heal properly. The children also had to do the captain's chair, a type of non-physical punishment in which they were to hold a squatted position for a long period of time with their arms outstretched. David Barron, Anthony's uncle, declared that the children confided in him that when Leva got angry, he used to throw dirty diapers at them, hit their faces and legs with a belt, and slam them into walls. Once, he even dragged one of the kids by the ear, leaving it scabbed and bruised. Barron's sister-in-law, Maria, declared that Anthony came to live with her family on 2 occasions, first in 2014 and again in 2015. She offered to take him and 3 of his half-siblings, but his mother said no because she needed her benefits. After that, neither she nor her husband were allowed to see the children again since they continued to report that the children were being abused. Anthony's mother went as far as to cut ties with her family and change his school to one where his history was unknown to his new teachers, since she was getting tired of them calling DFCS on her for the neglect she was inflicting on Anthony and the rest of her children. It's unbelievable how Barron went to such lengths to cover for her wrongdoings, but never put in the effort to be a better parent to her children. She was just interested in the welfare money she could get out of them. Anthony's 4th grade teacher, Miss Harmony Bell, also testified that he was a joy to be around and always got along with everyone in his classroom. She read out loud a handwritten letter by Anthony in which he spoke fondly of her, stating, "I just want to stay with you forever, but I can't, and I just hope you have a good rest of your life, because you already know that I'm going to have a good life." This sweet, innocent child knew more about torture and pain than anyone else since he was very little, and he still spread nothing but love and deserved so much better in life. Throughout the investigation, it was also discovered that Leva had a criminal history and gang ties. Caseworkers also didn't interview Leva at any point over most of the years they investigated the family, even though they suspected he could be part of the abuse since he lived on and off with Barron. They also failed to follow the department's rules, which required them to contact Leva's ex-partners to see if he had any issues with them. It was discovered that former partners had restraining orders against him since Leva beat them with their children present. On February 22, 2023, the closing arguments were made in a non-jury trial, and on March 7th, both were found guilty of 1 count each of murder by Superior Court Judge Sam Oda. On April 25th, Barron and Leva were sentenced to life in prison without parole for torturing and murdering little Anthony. Their motives remained unclear, although there were some suspicions about a confession Anthony made to his mother. Apparently, weeks before his death, Anthony had confided in her mother his liking for boys, and Leva, having heard this, took this confession as a motive for abusing him even more. However, those claims didn't go through in court, so a specific motive could not be determined. Anthony's death exposed the failure of Los Angeles County's social services system to protect the 10-year-old and his siblings, despite more than a dozen reports alleging Leva and Barron were abusive. Several caseworkers admitted to not following protocol properly and failing to include important risk factors such as past domestic violence or previous reports by the DCFS. The case gained significant media attention and raised concerns about child welfare and the actions of child protective services. In 2019, Victor Avalos, Anthony's father, sued the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services for failing his son. In May 2022, his case was settled for $32 million. Victor stated that he tried many times to see his son, but Barron wouldn't allow him. David, Anthony's uncle from his maternal side, supported these statements. If you suspect child abuse, call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-4, a child or 1-800-422-4453. All calls are toll-free and confidential. The hotline is available 24/7 in more than 170 languages. Thanks again for joining us in this story. Before you go, let us know what you think about this incredible case in the comments section. We'll see you again in the next one.